Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final webinar in our HR Summer Series. My name is Janice McPherson, and I'm the Director of Operations with CPHR Alberta. It's great to have you here with us today. I want to acknowledge that we're living and working on traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries, including the people of Treaties 6, 7, and 8. And if you're joining us from outside Alberta, I invite you to honor the land where you are today. Link. Our presenter today is Ada Tai. She's an HR professional who runs her own consulting firm, Beta B Consulting, providing effective and pragmatic HR services and corporate training. Another specialty of Ada's is personal job search and career coaching. She and her team have effectively helped over 500 people to find work in Canada and the U.S., and they've instilled confidence in professionals in virtual networking. Thank you, Ada, for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and give Ada a turn. I'm turning the floor over to Ada.
Hi, thank you very much, Janice, for the introduction. And thank you very much, Nicole, for helping to put this event online today. Nice meeting everybody virtually. I'll be talking lots.
There we go. So, Ada, I'm really excited to talk to you today about networking. And as I said in the introduction, I had virtual in brackets because I think that we all have some ideas of how to network in person, whether we really like it or really kind of just endure it. But networking virtually is a whole other ball of wax. So I know we're going to talk about that today. But I'd like to start by just asking you, how often do you network?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because before COVID came, I networked probably about every other day or every third day. And as a business and HR professional, networking is a critical business and life skill to me. It's just a way of doing things these days. Mm-hmm. After COVID hit us, we are all sent to work from home. Networking has to be bound by internet, for example. I felt limited, but now gradually I still would network about 2 or 3 times per week. Mm-hmm. Even when I went on holidays at the end of July, I would still network with the local restaurant owners and shop owners, and I talked to a lot of visitors who I met along the way. Mm-hmm. Networking comes quite naturally to me, so that way I gain a lot of local knowledge and information about the local markets. Besides, you just never really know who you're going to meet.
So true. And I love that you said you talked to people even when you were on vacation, because I think sometimes we think of networking as an activity that belongs to work time, when in reality we're always networking. We don't even know it sometimes. So you mentioned that chatting with people that you met along the way on vacation. Tell us how you network, both pre-COVID and during COVID, because I expect there's some overlap.
Yes, you're right, Janice. Definitely, there are some overlaps. Before COVID, my networking channels were very diversified. I enjoyed a lot with one-on-one coffee chats with people. I met in small group settings. I attended lots of conferences, training, delivered lots of training and presentations myself, being interviewed as a guest for a podcast or as a panelist. Also online events that I joined a lot, or either it's one-on-one or it's a small group or large group events. I find it very interesting that during COVID, as I mentioned at the beginning, I found it was a little difficult to adjust. I was thinking like now all the networking has to be bound by either a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting. Mm-hmm. And I did lots of these virtual coffee one-on-one half-an-hour chats. And then as time gradually goes by, I realized, why would I just limit myself doing that? I attended lots of networking events online, and I was assigned into breakout rooms, still doing your case studies or activities and mingling with others. So there is not much a difference there. Then I also realized that besides going on vacation, talking to these restaurant owners and etc., that's pick up the call. Schedule a time and call someone. There was a reason why phone was introduced at the first place. It was to be used to make phone call, right? Sending text messages with people. I have their contact numbers. I would message them and then keep in touch. And email is also a great way of keeping in touch. It does not have to be just Zoom meetings.
Those, that's so great to hear you say that. And, you know, the text really jumps out for me because I have a contact in my network who is amazing at touching base by text. And I so appreciate and admire her ability to keep on top of, I'm sure I'm not the only person she does that with. And it's a great way to reach out and touch in just an easy and simple way.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So the big question is always why? Why do you network?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess the best way to answer that question would be what would happen if we don't network?
Mhm.
For job seekers who have attended my presentations or speeches in the past, you often hear me talking about that more than 70% of jobs are actually not published publicly at these common job boards, which means that if you only stick to the job boards and not networking with people, you're competing with so many other job seekers against less than 30% of jobs that's available. So having a network around you is really important, that you ask other people for information, get their suggestions. These people in your networks are also your sounding board. So for example, if you get a call for an interview and you have a friend or connection who works at the company you're going to be interviewed with, that's a great source of information. Or if you're thinking about transitioning to a different industry or sector, or even moving to a different city, and you have a connection in that industry or city, and again, that's a great source of insider information. But for professionals, and this is what I always say, that if your networking starts on the day that you need a job, that's already too late. Mm-hmm. And if your networking ends on the day that you already have a job, that's too early. Recently, during COVID, I have been talking to some of my clients who were laid off from organizations, unfortunately. They panicked because they had been working with those organizations for years and they never really put in the time and effort to network. So now once they lost their job, they lost their momentum, they lost their objectives. They don't know where to focus anymore. So my suggestion always is first identify your career objectives, your values, strengths, weaknesses, and interests, and then network to identify which companies, industries, and skill sets from there. Yeah, and also for people who are entrepreneurs who are a part of this webinar today, audience, I would imagine that you would want to network as much as you can. And I learned that in the hard way. People who know me knows me that I am an analytical person. So I track all my networking efforts and results on a spreadsheet, nothing fancy. So I track the type of events I go to, people who I meet with, what did we discuss, the major conversation points, the type of businesses and business agents that I spoke to, how I got hold of these people. Was I referred or did I cold call? What was the method I met with them? How much time I spent in preparation to meeting with them? How much time do I spend in researching before I join the event? And how much time I do spend meeting with these people and at the event? So guess what? This is really powerful tool as tracking and analyzing. My highest personal record was I attended 69 coffee one-on-one chats and 22 in-person networking social events and delivered 17 in-person presentations all in 6 months.
Wow.
I know that sounds crazy. And this is on top of my day-to-day work. So I barely had much time to take care of myself and my family. But that was during the time that I was just starting out with my consulting business, Beta B Consulting. So I was really trying to put the brand name out there and doing everything I possibly could to get people to know us. And after tracking these activities for half a year or even more, I realized despite all these time and effort that I put in, less than 10% of these effort actually turned into something going forward. So I learned my lesson the hard way. Then I know, okay, I am going to target my networking effort going forward.
That's really interesting. And as I've been an entrepreneur, and I've also now a professional who's always, I enjoy networking, but I think that I can imagine the spreadsheet or the tracking method would work well for anyone who's networking, whether they're building a business or looking for a new job or just trying to build their network. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Mm.
When I was a job seeker years ago, I also created just a spreadsheet. Again, I don't know much of technology tools, so nothing fancy. Just to track all my job search activities, the companies I applied for the position, which they applied, any follow-up information with the employer. Did I get a call for interview? Did I receive any feedback? Do I need to follow up? And so on and so forth.
Mm. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to know there's somebody else that tracks things like that. So what are the steps that you recommend when someone sets out to build a strong network?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I mentioned, I learned my lessons the hard way that first of all, networking needs to be targeted. I have never met anybody saying that I have all the time in the world, I'm going to talk to just anybody in the world. That's not going to be effective. So before you start networking, the first step is really to understand the purpose, the why. So why am I networking? And then we know why are we networking, then we want to know who do we need to be connected with. So for instance, again, if you're a job seeker, I would imagine you want to be connected with HRs, recruiters, hiring managers from the companies or industries that you want to be a part of. And then the next question is, what are the channels? How can I be connected to these people? If you are working professional for the sake of professional development and you want to be connected with people inside your organization, outside your organization, but within the industry, so you can learn from each other, be mentored, mentor others, perhaps do some volunteer work with your professional designation association, and also join hobby clubs within your organization so you get recognized by your organization, perhaps potential for promotion. And also you establish your own brand name within the industry as an expert. If you're an entrepreneur, I would imagine you want to expand your horizons by building a wider customer base, having a wider reputation, brand reputation recognition. So social media work really well, and in-person trade or online trade shows these days, as well as large-scale events that you want to make an impact or even become a sponsor or speaker at these opportunities would be a great way to promote your brand.
That's great. What would you say to people about information interviews and using those as both a job search and a networking opportunity?
Yeah, information interview is great. It's a great source of building your connections, expanding your connections, and getting information, targeted information. I always go into a meeting, whether it's informational interview or just meeting with someone, chit-chatting, networking, with thoughtful questions. Prepare myself in advance, research about the person that I'm going to meet, the company I'm going to company agents I'm going to meet with, so I can ask targeted questions that's well thought out. I'm going to intrigue the other party, want to spend time and continue the dialogue with me. A lot of the people who I talk to that struggle with networking, one is because they feel reserved or shy, other is because they don't know how to continue the dialogue. So by doing the research, practicing your chit chat, your elevator pitch, your self-introduction, that's going to give you that self-confidence to start off the conversation. But once the conversation started with someone, you want to make sure that the conversation can flow. You don't want the conversation to stop just right after you said hi, introduced, the other party said hi, introduced themselves, and that was the end of it. You haven't reaped any benefits of that conversation. So you really want to ask target questions based on the why. Why are you networking with this party? And then continue that way. Yesterday, I was having a virtual coffee, half an hour, with a person that was introduced to me. So she's an HR professional as well in another organization, and we were connected. So we did our first meet and greet and high five, chatting with each other, introducing each other. Then I wanted to continue the dialogue. So I did some research about herself using Google and using LinkedIn. Again, nothing really fancy. And so I asked targeted questions about her past experiences. So I wanted to explore if there are ways for us to collaborate in a project going forward. And then she was also interested in my teaching experience because as a part-time instructor, I also teach at university. So she was asking targeted questions that way. So we really had a flow of the dialogue And we booked it for half an hour. We went probably for 37, 8 minutes because she had to go to the next meeting, but it was a great conversation. We both learned something new.
That sounds like almost a perfect 30-minute networking meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know we have some poll questions here. Do we want to jump into the first one? So the very first one, rate your overall networking skill. It looks like most people answered medium, and the next one is low. So that's interesting, but that's why you're here, is to learn about networking. And then the virtual networking skill, we're almost tied between low and medium for that, but lots of people did say that they really felt that they weren't, their virtual networking skills were not high at all. Ada, what would you say about those results?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, but a lot of people are really humble with their own networking skills. You're actually always better than you think with networking, because once you get a conversation flowing, it's actually a lot more natural and a lot easier than you would think. Yeah, so please put in your answers into the chat box. What can you do personally to help yourself improve your networking skills overall?
That's for sure. LinkedIn, learning about LinkedIn, confidence.
Yeah.
Making a weekly agenda. This sounds like one of our people, Ada.
That's excellent. Setting a goal. Yeah.
Yep. Using technology, being more purposeful and making the time to connect with others. Join a share group. That's a great way too. Get more comfortable with video-based networking. Reconnect with people. Putting in the effort to do the research beforehand and take notes. Yeah, that's I'm guilty of being a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person, but it really does pay off to do that research beforehand. And accepting failures as an opportunity to grow and improve. Yeah, that's good too. Spend more time on LinkedIn instead of Facebook. Reconnect with former colleagues, maybe just for a coffee or a check-in. Show up when you can. That's all, Ada.
Perfect. That's really good answers and cover a lot of things we touched on and we are going to touch on too.
Okay. And was there anything you wanted to add to all those that people had given?
Yeah, so I guess the only other thing I would probably add is that networking is a way to show your initiation, proactiveness in your research, preparing in advance, but also appreciating the other party who accepted the invitation to connect with you, whether it's in person or virtually. Let me give you a story. So I had a student graduate from local university and he was struggling with job searching. So he came to me and after graduation asked for some personal advice. So I gave him my 2 cents. And then I invited him to a few networking events. At that time, it was before COVID. He only showed up maybe to 1 or 2 of them and he was late. So I was hoping to introduce him to a few people at events, but I wasn't able to do that. So after a few tries, I gave up. Because as a job seeker, as a professional, he needs to show the proactiveness, the initiation, and appreciation, like I mentioned. This is, at the end of the day, it's his career, it's his life.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have an extremely good example. There was a lady that approached me after I was speaking at an event, and I was really impressed by her professionalism and the way how she introduced herself. And so she was asking for some personal opinions about transitioning to work in HR. So I gave her my personal suggestions. And then afterwards, without asking her for anything, she volunteered to edit my company website. And then she later on joined me at another trade show where I had a booth, and she helped me to manage my booth for the whole day.
Wow.
I never asked for any of that. But because of her gesture, I introduced her to 2 companies who were also present at the trade show, and she got interviewed with one of the companies eventually. So that just shows you the proactiveness actually goes a very long way.
It does. I completely agree. And I get approached by people often for information interviews, or I get introduced to people, and it makes a really big difference. You're making me think of someone I spoke to early in the pandemic time. She was a young woman on a work term and finishing her degree. And she hadn't really considered HR until that point. And so we had a really nice conversation. She had questions prepared, and she knew enough about HR to ask good questions, but she was open to learning more. And so because she was so professional on the phone, I connected her with a couple of other people in my network, and both of them reported that she was the same with them too. So I can't necessarily say she got an interview from that, and that wasn't really her goal. It was information, but it makes such a difference to talk to someone who is prepared and really seeking information in that professional way.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you do lots of writing for us, which we so appreciate. And in a recent blog that we published on the CPHR Alberta website, written by you, it's called How to Get Back on Track During the Pandemic. A Step Back is a Step Forward. You mentioned that the social distancing effect made you realize the importance of having social support. With COVID, almost all networking is done virtually. And many of our members at CPHR Alberta who have the need to expand their career or search for jobs find it difficult to start networking online with people from other locations. What are some of your tips for boundaryless networking?
Yeah, great question. And thank you for mentioning about my blog post. It's an honor for me to be a volunteer with CPHR Alberta. It has been a very good pleasure for over the last couple of years. So yeah, with COVID, we're more bound to work from home or meeting less people. I have really felt the need to reconnect with past colleagues and friends. And I set a goal for myself that every day I will send either an email or a text message to a past person that I haven't been talking to for some time. And with doing that, I was actually reacquainting with many of my old colleagues and friends. And either we grab a phone call or go for a walk in the park or walk the dog, whatever that case may be. And I learned lots about their life, their work they do, their professions and the organizations and industries. So networking always starts with people that you already know. So that's always my number one philosophy, is starting with people you already know. It's a lot easier to talk to them than to talk to a stranger. And you can ask targeted questions, and then you can ask for referrals and introductions. What I also had realized was that large-scale networking cannot happen. We're more bound to be at home or behind a computer screen. There are actually similarities between virtual and in-person networking, and also differences. So first, let's speak about the similarities. Similarities is that you still need to prepare, do your homework, research in advance about the event you're going to, the organizer of the event, the speaker at the event, or people you're going to meet. Google, LinkedIn are always your best tools. If you want to use Facebook, I mean, by all means. Also that you want to prepare your self-introduction and think about how you can chit-chat and continue with the flow of the dialogue. Other ways is that you want to know a purpose. What's the theme of this communication you're having with the person, the other party behind the computer screens? So these are all similarities. And you also, again, you need to show appreciation and proactiveness. The differences which plays in its advantage for virtual networking are twofold for me. First of all, it saves time. As a person being connected to someone else. So let's say someone wants to meet with me, whether it's virtually like via computer screen, via Zoom or Google, or it's a coffee over the phone, whatever that situation may be. I don't have to worry about fighting the traffic anymore. Or going to an event, I can just dress up, just change my shirt and be at home. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm more inclined to join, to talk to people, because it does not take as much time from my end. The other benefit is that a lot of people who are a little bit shy and they're scared of networking is because they haven't done much practice. So virtual networking actually gives you that help you break that barrier, because you're not meeting that person face to face that you're a little bit shy of a stranger. You're behind the screen. So your facial expression is not as clear as if you're meeting the person face to face. So you don't have to be as scared. So these are two benefits that I find for virtual networking that works well for me and for a lot of people who had a little bit of issues going in-person networking. The other great benefits of, the other channels that I want to suggest about virtual networking is, as I mentioned, people think about virtual networking is just going to an event online or a Zoom coffee chat. It's not just that. Email, text messages, phone calls are also great ways. Besides that, you can also join a webinar like what you're doing right now, leaving your comments, asking questions. So all of us who are the panelists today have an impression of you. So later on, if you want to send us a LinkedIn invitation or email communicating with us or asking for a follow-up communication, it's a lot easier for us to accept because we already have that first impression, a good first impression of you. You can also host an event or give a presentation of your own. Some people will say, well, that's nerve-wracking, or I'm junior in my field, I'm not a technical expert. Well, my answer is you don't need to be. If you are not comfortable talking about your job, talk about a hobby. If you're good at cooking, talk about it. If you're good at dealing with pets or kids, talk about it. Even if you're speaking to a very small group of audience, it starts somewhere, right? And before your talk, there's lots of good promotion. During your talk, you're attracting a group of audience, more than one person at a time. And after your presentation, there are always a lot of promotions as well. Your promotion, the organizer's promotion. And now everything being done online, these promotions can go internationally, which I reaped the benefit of. So during the COVID period, I delivered 13, including this one. This is my last one for the summer. So I delivered 13 webinars during the summer month. And with each one, I was able to reach a wider audience, an international audience, because now people from other regions, cities, regions, and countries can join these webinars. Why not? LinkedIn is also a great way, which I'm going to show you on the screen, my LinkedIn profile very quickly. And I'm going to touch base on the major points that I want to emphasize. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I just took a quick look at the chat box and the Q&A box, and people are talking about LinkedIn. And I know that you're active on LinkedIn. So I'm going to close out my video so that we can take a good look at your LinkedIn profile.
That sounds great. So everyone, I am going to show you my LinkedIn profile. I'll do a new share. Okay. All right. So here is my LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure you have a nice looking, professionally looking picture. The background picture is optional, but mine shows that I really love traveling. So there is a picture from a different country where I visited. You want to have a really good headline after your name. If you have designation, you can put in your headline and your about section. So what do you want people to know you about? What do you want your reputation to be about? So this is the about section. On your resume, this will be similar to your summary of profile section. What do you want people to see on top of your profile is a featured section. And then your experience. So with my current experience, I manage my own management consulting business. So I share a bit more details of what I do, and I share my brochures and some pictures of when I was in action. So this gives my LinkedIn profile more dynamics. Instead of just looking my profile picture, the audience can see a bigger me or can see a wider me. So they know me more holistically than just a profile picture. And there is the experience and also my education. And again, with some photos from past years, license and certifications, and volunteer. So if you have some spare time, this is also a great time to do volunteer work. You are being appreciated, much appreciated as a volunteer. You may get a reference from your volunteer. You are going to meet tons of really good people. Through me being a member and volunteer with CPHR Alberta, I met Janice and Nicole on the line and many other great people, and expanded my network that way. And then skills endorsements. So take advantage. You can add up to 50, yes, 50, hard and soft skills. So make sure you take advantage of that section and have enough of 50 filled. Recommendations is like a mini reference. It's optional, but I'm lucky to have a few people who recommended me. And accomplishments, so if you've taken professional development training, certificates, courses, publications, languages you speak, projects you worked on, organizations you belong to, and people who you follow. So this is all great information that you can include. Other things I would like to discuss is that under the Manage My Network, there are groups that you can join. So I joined quite a few. It does not mean I have the time to review every single group every single day and participate. But when you do have the time, I would highly recommend that you join a few groups. So they're all managed by LinkedIn users. Request to join. And if you are interested in switching to a different industry or occupation, joining a group is a great way of getting insider information. So you can ask questions, you can see what other people post and share, then you have the insight of their discussion within the industry or the occupation. LinkedIn is also a great way to connect with people. So before I meet with someone, I always send them a LinkedIn invitation. So in that way, I have my little blurb about quick 1 to 2 sentences of my self-introduction. So the people accepting my invitation, they know where this is from and why I'm sending them invitation. And also that after I meet with someone at a networking event or virtual networking event, I always connect with people on LinkedIn. I have been using LinkedIn for over 10 years, but more diligently and carefully in the last 5 to 6 years, I would have to say. It does take time to build up your profile. I would also recommend that you share, you post, you comment. So what I recommend is in order to build your online presence and maintain your credibility, establish your reputation as an expertise in your area, your website or LinkedIn are a great way not to sell, not to do hard sell. Think about yourself. These days, we don't like to hear salesperson knocking on our door to do hard sales anymore. Well, what we do like is that soft relationship building pitch. So your website, your LinkedIn is a great source of building that profile for yourself. Post regularly, share regularly, things that interest you professionally. Connect with people, nurture that relationship by following up, sending a message. And also this is a great way of reaching beyond borders. So last summer, I was reading a really interesting book while I was on vacation. And I sent a LinkedIn LinkedIn invitation to the author who happens to be in Australia. So we got connected and we chatted a little bit over LinkedIn messaging tool. And then I looked at her profile, she did mine, and I got connected to some of her connections and vice versa. And last week, I got a LinkedIn invitation from this lady who runs a training company in South Africa. She reached out to me because my profile popped up in the LinkedIn algorithm as a recommendation to her. She wanted to discuss with me via Zoom and talk about how the training and development functions are being practiced here in Canada. So my point here is that use LinkedIn to your advantage, but it does take some time to build up your profile. So use it, take advantage of it, and then you'll reap the benefits eventually. Okay, so.
Thank you for that. It's, and as you and I said before we went live today, we could talk about LinkedIn for hours. I think people are always really curious. I do have one question. Do you accept every invitation to connect that you receive?
Good question. I don't. I accept a lot. Excuse me. I accept a lot of the invitations, probably 85% of them. If the invitation comes with a message, with a note, add a note, I would more than likely to accept it with a smile. So maybe I'll take a step back. There are certain invitations with a note that I would not want to accept. So for example, this is real examples from what I read from people who want to connect with me. Let me read it out. So one person said, "Hi, I'm looking for work. Can you help me?" I did not accept that. Another person said, "I want to work in HR. Can I ask you questions?" I did not accept that. Another person said, "Nice to be connected with you. Where are you from?" I did not accept that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what I did accept, so these are really good examples. This one wrote me, "Hello, Ada. First, there is a greeting with my name. So I know this is not some last minute pulling notes together or somebody who really searched my profile, cared to connect with me and spend the time to even know my name. So hello, Ada, your profile looks like my immediate plan of action. That's why I want to connect with you. So I know the purpose why she's wanting to connect with me. I'm pursuing a career in HR. I just graduated from university with a degree in HR, and I'm taking my CPHR exam this fall. Can I add you to my network, so perhaps ask you some questions if I have any down the road? And accepted her invitation right away. And I even sent her reply back and said, very well drafted message. Good luck with your CPHR exam. Another one who sent me I really like was, this gentleman was introduced to me by another colleague over LinkedIn. So he said, thanks for John's introduction. I am reaching out to introduce myself and want to explore opportunities where we can collaborate on upcoming consulting projects. Cheers. And with his name. So those two are my top two favorites, notes, invitation with notes.
Yeah, that's great. And it does make such a difference in how the connection feels right from the start, if that note sends the right message.
It's about that first impression, and that's no different than if you're going to an in-person networking event or one-on-one coffee chat, or meeting someone online or via LinkedIn. It's always about that first impression. And via LinkedIn, they don't see your facial expression, your movement, your body language. So it's you're adding a note section that makes that difference.
Yeah, so true. So we're getting to the end of our time. It always comes so quickly. And I know we have some questions in the Q&A box, but what last ideas or information would you like to leave with the folks that are online today?
Yeah, and this is the final advice to our audience today is to build connections before you actually need it. As I mentioned, if you only want to build connection on the day that you need a job, it's too late. Or if you stop networking on the day you got a job, it's too early. And that I also have an ask of our audience is that if you can help me to reach having 500 followers on my company's LinkedIn profile, I would really appreciate if you check my company's LinkedIn profile and follow us there.
Thank you so much. And I'll check that out myself too. I don't think I'm following you yet. So,
thank you so much, Jen.
No problem. So let's jump right into the Q&A box because like I said, we have quite a bit in here. First question is around LinkedIn, a little bit around LinkedIn. It says, doing research on someone you are meeting, doing research on LinkedIn on someone you are meeting could be seen as snooping on them. How do you handle this without having the other person raise eyebrows?
So if I'm meeting with someone, let's say we scheduled a meeting, whether it's in person, online, or over the phone, and someone was checking my LinkedIn profile before the meeting, I actually appreciate it. I don't think the person is trying to be snoopy or is inappropriate. It actually shows me the person is being diligent and being proactive. Another message is sending to me is this person wants to prepare themselves before meeting with me to ask target questions or wanting to find something that we have similarities in the past so we can collaborate on.
Yeah, I agree. That's how it makes me feel too. And sometimes I even find if I see someone that if I see that someone has looked at my LinkedIn profile and we don't have a time set, I just assume that, like you said, I've popped up as a recommended connection and they're seeing who I am or what I have to offer. So I know it seems a little weird because people can see who looks at their profile, but I do think it's information gathering.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the next question is a little bit less specific. How do I portray myself or put my best foot forward?
I think we need to narrow down that question a little bit.
So I think you talked a bit about this with LinkedIn, with making the connection and that note that gets sent with the connection. I know that I have had people reach out to me kind of like a cold call for networking. What would you recommend people do if they want to, say they really want to go and work at ABC company and they want to reach out to someone to talk about it? What would you recommend they do to put their best foot forward?
Yeah, so if you are using LinkedIn, first of all, I would search through your own LinkedIn connections to see if you have any connections who work in the company that you want to be a part of. And if you do, as I mentioned, always start with the people you already know and ask for an introduction. It's a lot easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have anybody who in your connection, then you can LinkedIn search of the company that you're going to have an interview with or you want to be a part of. And then under LinkedIn company profile, there is the company summary, introduction of the company, and then the people section. So who are working at this company? Then you can select a few targeted people to message. Of course, with an added notes section, introduce yourself and ask to be connected, and then you can ask targeted questions. You can also do a Google search or the company's website outside of LinkedIn, and then you can do cold calling, you can send an email message. And I know this rate of success is not the highest, but what do you have to lose?
Yes.
Right? If you get one response, already kudos to you.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that because I've had times where I've been using LinkedIn to network a little bit more than I have been lately. And I would tell myself, you know, if I reach out in a professional way and they don't respond, they just don't respond. But if they do respond and something great happens, that's what we're looking for. And I have had that happen. So I always encourage people, reach out. The worst thing they can do is ignore you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even then they may just not be a regular LinkedIn user. And
Right.
so yeah, it's not personal. So next question, if someone is new to Canada, what would be initial steps to start networking?
Yeah, so I get a question a lot actually, especially if you came to Canada not long before COVID. It's a really tough situation because now you don't have that face-to-face exposure, but it doesn't have to be, right? So LinkedIn's a great way. Google search or company Google search or company website search is a great way as well. So if you are brand new with knowing nobody here, always a good way is to join your community groups, volunteer with your community leagues, for example, or if you are a designated professional from your home country, you can see if you can transfer those credits and your designation and to join a professional association here in Alberta or Canada overall. And then that's a great way to quickly expand your horizons. So for example, if you want to be an HR professional here in Canada, one great way is always join CPHR, the provincial chapter within the region that you reside in. And then you can become a member, pass your exam, get your designation, always attend the networking events that the organization puts on, even put up your hand for volunteering. Participate at different causes, hobbies, social groups. Eventbrite is a great place to search for these things. I have also personally joined these meetup groups in the past when I was a student, and sometimes I still go to in front of the gym, and these days they have these yoga or outdoors or Zumba outdoors, and I still go, but keeping a 2-3 meters distance, I still chit chat with other people, right? So you really need to put yourself out there.
Yes, yeah, it requires a real leap of faith and a deep breath of courage sometimes to do that.
True.
Yeah. This one is, the person says, Ada, great informative presentation. Please suggest how to overcome the hesitation of asking your network for help.
Yeah, so connections with someone virtually or in person is about building trust. It's about building a nurturing, rewarding relationship. You cannot always ask and not giving back. It's always a mutual respect. It's always a two-way streams. Imagine if someone always comes to your door and asks for something and never gives you back or never shows appreciation. Eventually, you drop the interest because it just does not work. So building a professional connection is also about building a human relationship. It takes time and effort and takes a heart, a mindset as well. So it does not happen overnight. So if you're connecting with someone at a company that you want to be a part of, and you're messaging that person, hey, can you get me a job? Or I'm interested in your company, I'm getting interview, can I ask you a few questions? If I'm that HR recruiter in that company and I receive these messages from hundreds of job applicants, I may not have the time or interest to respond. It's too generic, and also it does not have that personal touch to it. So you really have to think in your adding a notes, introduction, invitation section, how you want to introduce yourself to stand out. And also once you build that LinkedIn connection, how you can nurture that relationship so you can have a further step discussion instead of just asking one question and that's the end of it. Also, follow up works really well. So one of the person who puts in the chat box that is to find in the time and effort to follow up with person you meet at the event. I would say before COVID, on a quarterly basis, because I teach at university, I do a lot of networking, I do a lot of presentations, and also just the consulting work I do, I meet lots of people. So every quarter, I probably meet between 200 to 350 people. Do I really have the memory and the intelligence to keep in touch and remember everybody? No, I don't. The best I do is I keep track on the spreadsheets and I add them on my LinkedIn. Sometimes they message me, sometimes I message them. I probably keep in touch with 10 to 15 of them within 6 months or a year. And as time goes by, life gets busy, I may just keep in touch with 2 or 3 on a regular basis, diligently. And I know these 2 or 3 will bring me what I need to purpose for my networking. So it does take practice, it also takes diligence, and it's not an easy job to do, but you have to start somewhere.
Yes, so true. So the next question I have is a really interesting one. I'm interested to hear what you say about this one. It says, in this day and age where we're promoting unconscious bias and asking employers to be objective, can networking be seen as slightly negative?
Can we narrow down question a little bit?
Say it again. What?
You narrow down that question a little bit.
So I think what the person is asking is, if we're asking employers to be objective in their recruitment processes, but we're networking, and so they're getting to know things about us, is there any negative connotation there around unconscious bias?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So as I was listening to that question, I was trying to put myself in the shoe of the employer. So for example, a lot of the large consulting or accounting firms, they would have campus events at the universities. So these are company paid organized events to come to campus to give out recruitment information to the potential candidates and also mingling with them. Is there opportunity to observe who is the keener here? Who wants to ask questions? Who shows the proactiveness? Who presents themselves professionally? Are they having a setting of bias for themselves? I'm not sure. But I know the people who present themselves really, really well has a better chance of being admitted into an interview or into a job later on, because that first impression was set really, really well. So I don't think about it as a way of unconscious bias. I think an employer needs to be cautious in their recruitment methods and their selection process, not to discriminate or not to disadvantage people who they have not met in person in the past. But I think putting yourself out there, putting a consistent reputation about who you are, what you represent, and what you want to receive as a connector, it does not hurt you at all. It actually serves you benefits.
So true. Next question. Can you share a big win where you landed a great job offer or another coveted opportunity due to your networking?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit progressive, if I can put it that. That's probably a nicer way of putting it in my networking. I remember there was time that I was job searching myself. And so I had an interview with an organization that I thought I would be the ideal candidate. And I went through so many rounds of interviews and processes, coffee chats, lunch even, and tour. And I really thought I was going to be the one. And they selected another person instead of me. But instead of being negative and hating the experience, I actually was staying in touch with the CEO who interviewed me a couple of times. And to date, we're still having coffee chats and phone calls, whether it's in person or virtually, to stay connected. So even though she never selected for me for the job, I add one more person to my connection. And guess what? After I started my HR consulting company, I have been providing HR services to that organization. So at the end, it served me benefits.
That's really interesting, and it takes us away from just the virtual or the LinkedIn pieces and into that relationship building, which is really the basis of all networking.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I've got another question here, and I wondered if this might come up, and I've opened up my own LinkedIn so I can provide some help, but you may know it off by heart. So the person is saying that if you don't have a premium LinkedIn membership, you can't send a special note. But I don't have a premium LinkedIn membership and I can send notes. So they're saying, is there any other alternative to make an impression so the person accepts you? So do you know off the top of your head that when you're using your phone, how to add a note? If you know it off the top of your head, I'll let you say it. If not, I'll find it in my phone and share it with the group.
Yeah, you can help me with that, Janice. I usually
Okay.
use my computer for it. On the phone, I usually just do share and post. Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
I don't have a premium account.
yeah,
I did
I
one.
don't I
Yeah.
don't have a premium either. I just need to find somebody I am not connected to.
Yeah, I've tried the premium once and I decided not to do it because
Hmm.
the regular account, the free account, serves just fine to me for me, and I use it
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Mm. So I've just pulled up some person who's now going to think I'm stalking them that I'm not connected with. And if I want to connect with this person, the connect button is nice and bright, and I could click that and she would just get a connection request with no note. But if I click more right below connect, it says personalize invite, and that's how we can go about doing that. Does that sound familiar to you too, Ada?
Yeah, that's a great finding from your part, Janice. And if you're on the computer, it's
Oh,
very easy just to add a note when you about to meet with someone.
yes, it absolutely. It's super clear when you're on the computer and just takes a little, and I learned that trick from Eric Pye, who is another great networker. He taught me that a couple of years ago, so I always try to share it with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what's our time here? We have time for one more question, and we've got an interesting one here. Have you used extracurricular or hobby groups as networking opportunities?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, since COVID, I have been joining these outdoor Zumba and yoga classes, and I've talked to some really interesting people. So it has nothing to do with work, and I never intended for it to be work because I want to have a relaxation time.
Yeah.
And even when I go on holidays, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's webinar, I network with people. To me, it comes naturally. It's
Hmm.
about socializing with the other person. I don't want to make I did not intend it for it to be purposely to be professional connection networking, but it just
Hmm.
happens so naturally because I practice it. I know what to say. I'll give
Hmm.
you a funny example. So my family and we were traveling in Europe. We were hiking and we started talking to a group of people. This was 2 years ago. So we were talking to a group of people. They sound like they're from Canada. So we were speaking to them and ended up these people are from Calgary. So we talked, and what's the chance in that country, a quite remote hiking trail, you're meeting someone who's from that close to you. And so we stayed in touch to date and we became family friends. So you
Wow.
never know who you're going to meet
Hmm.
and also who they know, right? So you always want to ask people for introductions.
Hmm.
Another good resource I want to share is, again, wanting people to check the free resources I shared with job seekers at the beginning of the pandemic. I posted 14-day job search campaign,
Hmm.
free materials and free video recordings on my company website. And so there are lots of good information for you to download and watch. And I spent 2 days of the 14-day job search campaign talking about networking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and all of your knowledge and your ideas and tips today. And it's always fun for me to do the interview style presentation. So I'm glad that we got to do that together. It's been too long since I've seen you in person, but seeing you on the screen is fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me and Janice, even though we know each other for a couple of years, we always know of each other in the
Mhm.
connections. We always share and post each other's posts on LinkedIn. We don't need to see each other face to face. It's
So
the
true.
virtual, yeah, the virtual connection is the powerful tool.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, that I don't feel like we've been out of touch because I see you on LinkedIn and I see you as a volunteer with CPHR. So yeah, it's a great way to keep in touch even without that face to face.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for everyone who attended today. It's great to have you here. And I hope I'll see you again in the fall as we launch into more virtual activities. Happy networking.
Great. Thank you so much. See you on LinkedIn.